Hi, everyone. If you logged in early, you are sick of me introducing myself, but I'm going to say it again. I am Marie Keister, and I'm part of the project team here tonight to talk about the Little Turtle Way improvements in your area. So we're delighted to have you here this evening. And if Nick will take us to the next slide, I will just kind of remind you of the functions you have available to you this evening. So you have access to, first of all, your mute control box. That button that's highlighted in green on the lower left hand of your screen you're automatically muted now. There will be time later when we will make it possible to unmute your button. So more details on that. There is also a question and answer chat box, and you can put questions there at any time. And throughout the presentation, or the evening, I should say, we will pause for questions, and I will be reading those questions to our panelists, who I will also introduce tonight. But what I would like to do now, I just want to welcome you again, but first I would like to introduce you to Kevin Thomas, who is our project manager with the City of Columbus. Kevin. Kevin, you may be muted.
Sorry about that. My phone was not cooperating there for a second. Thank you, Marie, for that introduction, and welcome everybody to the public meeting tonight. This is the public meeting for the Little Turtle Way Roadway Improvements Project, and my name is Kevin Thomas. I am the project manager for the City of Columbus over this project, and I'm excited that everybody's able to be here tonight. I remember, as many of you probably do, we had our public meeting last year around August where we first introduced the project and discussed what our plans were. Since then, we've done a lot of work designing the project, and in that time, I've gotten to talk with and communicate to a lot of you about concerns, questions, recommendations for the project. So tonight, we're excited to talk through some of that with you, present the project as it is today, and then show you what our next steps are for the project. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Marie to continue on.
Thank you, Kevin. So I just want to go through some logistics. So if we want to move on, we've already done the welcome and Kevin's introduction. I will introduce some more participants here in a few minutes. And I want to go over some logistics. I already mentioned that we are going to do a presentation tonight, but we have broken it up into pieces so that as we cover a topic, we will stop, we'll pause for questions, and then I will take those questions out of the Q&A box that you may be typing there, and then our panelists will respond. After we get through the full presentation, we will have an opportunity for live questions and unmuting you as well. So we want to respect your time and get you started. So the next slide, I just want to let you know this meeting is being recorded. Tomorrow, or it usually takes a couple of days before we get the recordings back, it will be posted to the project website. Now, the project website is at columbus.gov, and I think Judd, who is helping us out here, will be able to post the website address a little bit later, and we can tell you how to get there. And the presentation will be there as well. So I've already covered the second two bullets, so we'll go to the next slide. So it may be that we don't get to all your questions tonight, and if that's the case, you still always have the ability to reach out to Kevin Thomas, who you've already heard from this evening, and we will include his contact information. It is on, I believe, the last slide tonight. We ask that you be respectful and kind. I know that's going to be easy for all of you, but I just have to say that obviously we're not going to allow derogatory, inflammatory, or vulgar language. We don't let that, and we reserve the right to remove anyone who does violate that, but I know we'll be in good shape tonight. So for the next slide, without further ado, we've already introduced Kevin Thomas. He is going to be joined in presentation this evening with Kevin Carpenter. He is the consultant project manager with Carpenter Marty Transportation, and my firm, Murphy Upson, is a part of that team. So first we'll get started with Kevin Thomas. Next slide, Nick.
Thank you again, Marie. Okay, so I'm going to talk through some of the overview information on the project. I'll get us introduced here and show everybody what we have and what we're looking at. So the map that you can see, or hopefully everybody can see the map in front of us, the project area is Little Turtle Way between the intersection of the westbound State Route 161 ramp at the south to the intersection of Firewater Lane and Little Turtle Way at the north. Included in this is also the intersections of Blue Jacket Road, Double Eagle Drive, Derringer Drive, Long Rifle Road, and the adjoining driveways for the fire station. So in this project area, we've got a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of factors in the project. So we'll try to go through discussing each of those for you this evening. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So for a quick project overview, the project overall enhances that corridor that I showed you on the map, or that I described, that's going to enhance the Little Turtle Way corridor from State Route 161 up to Firewater Lane. Some of the major parts of that project is to consolidate what is existing divided north and south roadways for Little Turtle Way into one roadway on the west side of the street, or the west side of the corridor, that will contain both those north and southbound lanes. This will include rebuilding and repaving those consolidated lanes to allow for safer, smoother travel for vehicles, as well as accommodations for bicyclists, pedestrians, and other roadway users. The next slide, please. So with that, we will be constructing a roundabout at the intersection of Long Rifle Road and Little Turtle Way. It will be a modern roundabout that will incorporate all the facilities for vehicles, pedestrians, and everybody else that needs to utilize that roadway. And we're also installing a new traffic signal at the intersection of Little Turtle Way and State Route 161 on the south of the corridor. Also included in the project are going to be new sidewalks, which will be constructed on the west side of the roadway, and a shared use path, which is our bicycle pedestrian path that will be constructed on the east side of the roadway. And these will be installed to connect to all of the connecting sidewalks and the communities that adjoin the roadway. Next slide, please. So a big part of why we develop these projects is our project's purpose and need. The Little Turtle roadway pavement that is existing is badly deteriorated and is needing to be rebuilt. It's more than just what a resurfacing would do. The actual sub-base of the roadway is degraded to the point where we need to reconstruct all of that. Another big issue in this area is that we don't have any safe areas to walk or ride your bikes in this central part of the neighborhood. This project aims to address that. Another concern that we have is low visibility at the intersections of Long Rifle and Little Turtle Way. We have two intersections there, as we have the northbound and southbound lanes. This new roundabout intersection and that consolidation will help reduce and eliminate that low visibility situation, allow drivers to be able to see as they're navigating towards the intersection and through that intersection. The project's goal is to address these needs and help fulfill some of that, the issues that we're missing out there in the roadway, as well as rebuilding and reconstructing what is out there today. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to give it over to Kevin Carpenter. He's going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the improvements and what we can expect with the project. Kevin?
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening to talk about this project. So what you're looking at here is a map, an overview map of the project that we've designed. As Kevin talked about, we will be consolidating the existing roadway from a split northbound and southbound lanes to a consolidated one roadway near the western side of the corridor as it exists today. The black areas that you see is the proposed pavement. The green areas are areas of the existing roadway that are being removed as a part of this project. That'll be seeded, so that'll be grass in the future. The orange that you see is the shared use path that Kevin spoke about. That is a 10-foot asphalt path, typical bike path that you see in the city. On the west side of the roadway, there is a 5-foot concrete sidewalk. One of the couple of things that we did as a part of the public meeting the first time around is we extended that sidewalk south across the fire station property to the interchange with 161. So as Kevin mentioned, so starting kind of on the left side of the image, moving to the north, so we're adding a new traffic signal at the intersection with the ramp to 161. That'll be a new fully actuated signal that'll be in conjunction with the signals to the south. And then as we move up through the corridor, towards the roundabout. You can see that we've got 2 lanes, northbound and southbound, into the roundabout. And then, so the roundabout was constructed and added to the project to lower speeds in the neighborhood and to provide a safer intersection at Long Rifle. A roundabout provides a significant number of safety improvements to an intersection by lowering speeds. It reduces the amount of critical accident points in the intersection itself. It provides safer access for pedestrians to cross the intersection. So it provides several benefits to the community. So the gray areas you see within the roundabout area, those are the splitter islands. Those are the concrete islands that separate traffic in the north and southbound directions and east and west on Long Rifle. So as we move north or to the right out of the roundabout, again, you can see we've got 2 southbound lanes coming into the roundabout. We have a single lane going north. And then you can see as we approach Blue Jacket Road at the north or the right side of the project, we've added a dedicated left turn lane onto Blue Jacket Road, which will help prevent any accidents there for left turning vehicles. So through traffic can move continuously through that area. And then you can see the project ties in just there right at Firewater Lane there. So if we go to the next slide, we can see this in a little bit more detail. So this is the south end of the project. Again, you see the new traffic signal at the interchange with 161. Go back one, sorry. You can see the new sidewalk extension on the west side that goes all the way through the fire station property. The blue circle there just south of the roundabout, that's a detention basin. So that's for stormwater management. That was moved at the request that we heard during the public meeting. So that's how that got located there. You can see the roundabout there. And then if we go to the next one, next slide, Nick. So on the north side here, excuse me, you can see we've consolidated the roadway again on the west side. The tree that was several people talked about, the tree is being maintained. The construction plans clearly specify that tree will not be impacted by the project. So that will remain, will not be impacted by any construction. And then you can see the shared use path and the new sidewalk continuing all the way up to the north end of the project. So now I think we're going to go back over to Mr. Thomas. Next slide, Nick.
Thank you, Kevin. I am going to talk through some of the construction costs, or the project costs for the Little Turtle Roadway project. The first phase of the project was our design phase. We've estimated and we've run through $350,000 pretty closely to get through this design process. The next big piece of cost is typically right-of-way acquisition. On this project, we're estimating about $100,000 for that cost. We don't fully have that vetted yet, but we're working on finalizing that. And then, of course, the big cost is our construction cost. So we're looking at about $4.8 million for the full cost of construction at this time. That includes the reconstruction of the roadways, the repaving of all of that new roadway area, the roundabout intersection. That also includes all of our lighting, stormwater management, any other utility issues that we may run into with the construction. That's the signal at the south end of the project, as well as all the tie-in points that correlate with all of that. So the total for the project cost right now, we're looking at about $5.25 million altogether. So next slide, please. So in terms of the project savings, the city does look at overall cost of projects as we're getting into these types of larger scale projects. In specific details for this project, reconsolidating the roadway allows us to reduce the overall roadway pavement by 11%. That accounts for about 21,500 square feet of pavement that will no longer be required for the road. By doing that, the construction for this particular project goes down or saves us about $740,000 just in the reconstruction project by consolidating those lanes. Another big factor that the city concerns itself with is maintaining those roadways after we construct them. So all roadways have a service life, and over the projected service life of the new roadway, we stand to save over $130,000 in maintenance. That service life for this would typically be about 25 or so years until we would have to resurface that roadway again. That breaks down to about $2.20 per square yard per year of roadway that we don't have to construct with this project. Next slide, please.
So I'd like to, we're going to pause for questions, but we are seeing some people have had some difficulty getting in, although we have something like 91 people who have managed to get in. They should not need a password to get in. But if they do, if they're continuing to struggle, if they're contacting you because you're here and they're calling your phone, if you could just tell them they should not need a password, but if for some reason they're still hitting a barrier, they could put in 1234. That's simple. And the other thing is, I do see a couple of raised hands, and we can get to you live later, but for now, we're asking that you put your questions in the chat box. So far, aside from the issue being raised about some people having difficulty getting in, we're also asked if it's possible to see the attendee names, though this WebEx is not set up to do that. But if you are interested in that information later, you can contact Kevin Thomas and we can provide that information to you. So I do want to take a chance now to introduce the other people who are available to answer questions tonight. So with us this evening, and I'll have them undo their cameras so that we can see them. James Young is the administrator and Division of Design and Construction with the Department of Public Service. Jim Pike is the assistant administrator, assistant city engineer, design and construction. All of these folks, by the way, are with the Department of Public Service. Judd Hines is a design project manager with the Department of Public Service. And of course, you're already hearing from Kevin Thomas with the city and Kevin Carpenter with the consultant team. So let me see. I think we have some other questions now, so bear with me. Okay, so Kevin Thomas or Carpenter, can you explain the reasons why the roundabout location has changed a little bit since the meeting last year, and why you pushed it to the west rather than to the east?
Sure. So I can touch on some of that. So the roundabout location compared to where we saw it last year went through just a couple little iterations with design. We wanted to move that roundabout a little bit further to the east from where it was initially so that we could try to minimize or really eliminate the impacts to the private homeowners that have property on the west side of the roundabout. The original design didn't quite meet that goal, so we tried to move it over just a little bit farther so that we could avoid that impact over there. As far as the reasoning behind the overall location for the roundabout, there's a couple of really big reasons there, one of which is that in an effort to save cost on the roadway, we're trying to utilize as much of the existing roadway spacing as we have out there. So by using some of that when we reconstruct this, we're able to prevent having to excavate and reconstruct a new road bed from the ground up. The second big reason is if we use too much of the roadway on the east side of the road, the splitter islands and the geometrics of the roundabout would cause us an issue with access to folks that have the residents in Double Eagle Drive. So the splitter islands they need to be maintained at a certain length, and that would potentially cut off access to those driveways. And then the last real big issue is in order to fit that detention basin in the south side of the roadway, we need that space there so that we can get water and then have room to contain that water and treat it in that area. So all of that kind of goes together to determine really where the most optimal location for that roundabout intersection is going to be.
Great. Okay, so Nick, can you take us back to one of the maps where things are really itemized? And we have a question about the tree. Can somebody point out exactly where the tree is that you're going to protect? The oak tree, I believe, is what we're talking about.
Sure. So if you see, I don't know if everybody can see the screen where the pointer icon is, but we're talking about the tree that's just north of the Double Eagle Drive access, and then it's just to the west of the northbound lanes, and that kind of triangular shape piece of land in between the existing roadways to the north. I think it's been referred to as the little turtle oak tree. We definitely heard the response in the original public meeting, and more than just trying to avoid it, we've actually incorporated a tree protection plan for this location in the project.
Thank you. There are a number of questions about Parks and Rec and what their plans are for opening their 98 acres for walking and bike trails. And there may be a question related to that. Would that increase traffic? So do you want to address, Kevin, what you're aware of on those bike trail plans?
If they're talking about Schaefer Park on the north end of Little Turtle Way, I'm actually not sure. I don't know if any of the other panelists have any more information on Schaefer Park. I do know that there are some other plans for bike paths and park trails, both in Big Walnut Creek and as well to the west, as well as Dublin Granville Road on the southeast side of this general area. I have not personally heard of or know of any plans for the Schaefer Park opening up access to trails. I don't know if anybody else has any other info on that.
Yeah, and let me just clarify. So the team that's talking tonight is from the Department of Public Service, and the Department of Rec and Parks is a different department, and they coordinate, of course, all the time, but that's why they don't have the specifics on those. So let's talk a little bit more about the roundabout. So we have a number of questions related to that. Here's one. Why are the approaches to the roundabout so steep and jagged? People will just hit the roundabout like they're doing now on the North Hamilton Road alignment. Hold that thought, because let me see if I can find another roundabout one. One's related to the size of the roundabout. Why reduce our 4 lanes? Well, we kind of go to a couple of questions here. Why are we reducing 4 lanes when traffic is going to increase? And when is this going to be shovel ready and pedestrians crossing a roundabout? So a lot of questions about the roundabout. Is it a choke point? Is it designed well? Is it going to attract more traffic? Is it safe?
Sure. Marie, Kevin, do you want to touch on some of those specific questions about the roundabout operation itself? I think you could probably explain some of that for us.
Sure. So Nick's got the slide up there with the map. So if you look on the north side, which is the right side on your screen of the roundabout, and you see the alignment that gets curved coming southbound, we kick the alignment to the west or to the right as you're traveling southbound, and then bring it back to the left and then back to the right. So what that does to the driver, it actually slows traffic down. What we look at in a roundabout is we look at, from a design standpoint, it's called the fastest path. So what's the fastest path a vehicle can travel through that roundabout? And so what we try and do is we try and minimize those speeds, those fastest paths through the roundabout, and we try and get those down to about 25 miles an hour. The advisory signs on a roundabout are for lower speeds than that, but again, we're anticipating people are going to go faster than they should. And so we try and create an alignment that forces traffic to slow down as they approach the roundabout. So that's a design feature of all roundabouts. This particular roundabout was actually independently reviewed by a third party. By the city had a third party design consultant look at this roundabout, and we incorporated their comments into this, in addition to this comments that we received from the city. So this has been designed and looked at by several different eyes. We feel very confident that this is going to improve traffic operations in the neighborhood. It should provide a much safer, travel through the project area for all directions. And so that's why the alignments are so skewed coming into it, is to basically slow down speeds as they approach the roundabout. As far as the pedestrians go, roundabouts are actually safer for pedestrians as well, because again, as you approach it, whether you're walking or biking, you only have to look one direction, right? So you're only looking at traffic to your left. And that's the only thing you have to worry about as you're crossing the first approach. And then obviously you look to the right as you approach, as you cross the other side. So you've got these safe harbors within the roundabout itself in those splitter islands. So you're basically only crossing 1 or 2 lanes of traffic at a time, as opposed to crossing, the entire intersection. So it's actually, you have vehicles coming in and approaching at slower speeds. You've got shorter distances to cross as a pedestrian or a bicyclist. So it's actually safer for pedestrians and bicyclists as well. The other thing that I didn't mention previously is that we are adding lighting to this project. So there will be residential street lighting along the whole project. So it's going to provide even at nighttime, it's going to be a much safer roadway for non-vehicular users. So for those pedestrians and those bicyclists, the project will be lighted as well.
Great, thank you. So I have three additional areas of questioning that we've got to get to. So first of all, let's talk about the traffic signal. There's a concern that that's going to create backups and that the data you're basing your traffic on is 2 years old. Can you speak to the longevity of traffic studies and your thoughts on that intersection and how that's going to work? The signalized intersection.
Sure. So our firm did a traffic study as a part of this project when we started. We collected data. We did 12-hour traffic counts in 2019, so pre-COVID, during the school year. So that's when you have the highest amount of traffic. And then we went through a certification process with ODOT to basically forecast that out 20 years. So what they do is they look at any development that's going on in the area. We assign a growth rate to the project area. So in some cases that can be negative. In this case, it was positive because we anticipate, more growth in this area in the future. And then we use our count data that we collected. We extrapolate that out for 20 years, and that's what the project is designed for. So this project is actually designed for 2040 traffic data. And so the signal in particular at the south end of the project was designed with that traffic in mind. As users of this intersection know, the current existing conditions in the AM time period, so the AM peak, they experience significant delays trying to get out of the Little Turtle community. It's just not a movement that you can make because you've got that continuous left turn lane on the freeway. So what the traffic signal will do is it will provide a gap in that free-flowing left turn movements northbound, provide a gap to allow residents of this community access to get out of the community. So what we have at the south end, so Nick, if you go to the next slide, actually, you can see it better. So what we have coming
Kevin?
south, yep, I'm sorry.
With me, as you're describing this, will you make sure that you talk about the right turn lane and how all those lanes will work?
Sure. So you can see the turn lane markers in the pavement there. So we've got on the southbound lanes, we've got a through and right turn lane and a dedicated right turn lane because most of the traffic coming out of the community is getting onto 161. So we've got basically two turn lanes and a shared through and right turn lane and the dedicated right turn lane that will be, again, on this traffic signal. Traffic will be allowed to move through there. As I mentioned previously, this traffic signal will be coordinated with the two traffic signals to the south. So that's going to be completed as well. So these will all work together. So at no point will we have significant backups on the bridge that will cause any detriment to the traffic signals to the south. So this has all been worked out with the City of Columbus and with ODOT. There's been consultation with both parties. So, we feel confident that the traffic data that we're using is correct and incorporates all of the potential development in the future.
So let me acknowledge we're getting some questions about right-of-way and construction. We are going to get to that. So we're going to hold off on those specific questions because we have slides to address those in a minute. And then if we don't answer your question yet, we'll come back to it. Two questions, though, we can still address is let me do maybe a short one first. The depth of the pond. Do you know how deep the pond will be? There's a concern about safety for children and so forth.
I can give you that information. Give me 1 second.
Okay, so while you research that, I think a big issue of a lot of people who are on the call is the going from the boulevard and the 2 lanes to consolidating. So a lot of related questions here of, on one hand, it's, well, you're reducing the ability to serve traffic and we expect more traffic. On the other hand, what are you doing with that green space that is going to be opened up? And I think there's some questions related to how that green space is going to be used. And then what other plans are for landscaping. So I just loaded a lot on you, Kevin. Thomas, if you want to take a shot at that.
Certainly, absolutely. I can address, I'll just go right down the line, I think. So one of the big questions, and I know it's a concern looking at what the project is showing on the aerial, is it looks like we're reducing lanes, so how are we not reducing the capacity for vehicles to travel on the roadway? The way that the project is designed and set up, as Kevin Carpenter alluded to, the project is designed to work efficiently with the types of traffic that we see. So by utilizing the roundabout, we're able to address traffic needs as they exist in this specific community. If we saw traffic patterns that didn't function well under this condition, we wouldn't have proposed this type of an intersection. So that's really the first big thing to remember, is that the roundabout and the way the roadway is set up is specifically designed based on the traffic patterns that we see, where people are going and where people are coming from in the community. And then, as Kevin Carpenter mentioned, we project that based on proposed and possible developments, what we see going on in the surrounding area. All of that kind of information goes into forecasting that traffic amount. The second part of it then is the roadway from the south of the roundabout really is the same amount of roadway that we have out there existing. We have 2 lanes that are traveling northbound. We have 2 lanes traveling southbound. So that portion of the project really isn't changing. And those things are needed to accommodate the volumes of traffic that we expect to see as we move into the future. When we look to the north of the roadway, that's where we kind of see, and Nick, I don't know if you can slide over to the other part of the slide on this one. You can see a little bit of a reduced area in roadway. These roadway widths or roadway lane allotments are reduced based on the traffic that is needed, or what the traffic needs to traverse this section of the road. So we didn't have a need for 2 lanes traveling northbound based on what the traffic projections are anymore. So we reduced that so we don't eliminate that unnecessary pavement. We provide turn lanes for Double Eagle Drive and Blue Jacket because those movements are significant and folks will need a place to get out of the roadway, out of that through lane to turn there. As you come southbound, we have that 1 lane for the traffic that's coming off of Cambria and Blue Jacket, but as you get closer to the intersection of the roundabout, we widen back out to 2 lanes because, again, at this point, we have several different movements. Folks are trying to turn right or potentially turning left or going through. So this allows that traffic movement to flow more efficiently, really, than what is today. So it looks on paper like we're reducing a lot, but really we're adding the efficiency that will allow vehicles to move through this corridor better than what they can do currently. So to jump into the next part of it, I think we were talking about the green space and the landscaping. Kind of what I wanted to touch on is the green space. While we're changing over the look of the boulevard setup and we are putting this into a consolidated roadway, we're really increasing the overall amount of green space that we have in the area. By adding the shared use path and the sidewalk, we're trying to open up that multimodal feel for the community, make it feel a little bit more like you can walk, you can bike, you can do these other activities that currently don't exist with the roadway. And then on top of that, we're incorporating street tree plantings throughout the corridor. As Kevin mentioned, we'll have the street lighting so that at night it's illuminated and it feels safe to walk and bike in the neighborhood. We're also planning with some coordination. There's options to do other types of planting. If we can do grass in some of the medians, we would love to, but all of those options require coordination with either community groups or property owners. So there's options for those things that we can do to help, whatever we can do to help improve that aesthetic of the roadway with the project. But there's definitely factors that are already incorporated into the design to help with that aesthetic. Marie, did I miss anything, or was there another part to that question?
Did you address the mounds and what happens with the mounds?
Okay, certainly. So the mounds as they are will largely remain unchanged in the center part of the roadway, what we see here on the screen, which is north of Long Rifle. The project will utilize some of that space on the west side to widen out those lanes, but the remaining part of the central mound largely is going to remain unchanged. We're going to grade, or we'll lay the earth back on the outside of the shared use path so that it meets that existing earth naturally, and we'll reseed that so that it looks like it's supposed to. But otherwise, the project doesn't have any plan to, remove any of that earth or change the way those mounds look. Now, the existing lanes will be removed and then reseeded. I think Kevin Carpenter mentioned that as well, that we'll return those back to green space as they should be with the project. Now, the south side of the intersection, south side of Long Rifle, that is where, as we said, that new retention basin will be. So that one will require some more earthwork. We'll have to modify that to fit that stormwater detention space in there. And again, it'll be seeded, it'll be grass, it'll be green space so that it can, blend in with the community and how we would like the project to look. And then only in, extreme rain events when we have a certain water runoff from the roadway and the surrounding area would you really see high amounts of water in there. And then that's temporary. It contains that water for a short period of time and allows that to drain away into the sewer system, the storm sewer system. So that pretty much covers, I think, what the project will do and how those mounds will look after the project.
So also at the entrance of Little Turtle, there was some discussion last year about, ideas for an entryway or a gateway. Can you speak to whether some land is going to be allotted for that?
Certainly. So we did get a lot of comments about the gateway feature, the Little Turtle. I think there's a stone there now and a turtle with some trees and such that are in that kind of feature. And we definitely discussed that internally, and we are certainly open to an option to try to utilize some of the space that's on the east side of the roadway to hopefully recreate a feature like that. As with some of the other more intensive landscaping features, the city would require some type of maintenance agreement, either with a community group or with property owners or somebody that would agree to maintain that as it is today, so that the city doesn't have an expectation that we'll come back and take care of all that stuff. That's something that we would want the community to be able to take care of, or property owners to be able to take care of in that location.
And then a specific question about what is the sidewalk purpose in front of the fire station? Is this the side that will eventually cross over the freeway to access Blendon Woods?
Sure. So the sidewalk that extends down to the fire station was specifically added because we got a number of requests from the first public meeting that told us that they needed a sidewalk to get to the fire station. We understand it's a polling place maybe. I think there's a mailbox that's typically posted down there. There were several reasons that we were given why that sidewalk needed to be extended to the fire station. The original plan, we did not see a reason to, so we didn't extend that, but we've added that because of the community request for that. Kind of the second part of that is the eventual crossing for the bridge on 161 won't come from the sidewalk, at least not any likely term. The shared use path, the reason that we pushed that over to the east side of the roadway is because that is going to be the more logical and unobstructed place for us to try to cross that bridge on State Route 1 over 161. The current project limits require us to stop here. We don't have that connection point or that direct access to cross. Currently, what you would be able to do is come to that position. You can go onto the shoulder or the curb side of the roadway, and there's about 8 feet or so of shoulder on the bridge. The future plan is to create a designed connection to allow pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the bridge. It's owned, the facility is owned by ODOT. That's limited access right of way. So the city can't really embark on that on our own. We need ODOT to kind of coordinate that project. So that's something that would be farther out in the future. But it would be the east side of the roadway where that crossing would eventually go.
Thank you. And then we've had a lot of questions about the construction timeline, the right of way. Who does the property belong to today, and who you're going to buy it from, and so on and so forth. I know you're going to cover all those details in just a minute. Before we go, though, I think we have a response now to that retention basin.
Yeah, so as Kevin mentioned, that is actually a detention basin. It's a dry basin. So typically, if it's not a rain event, there won't be any water in it. It'll, like he said, it'll be seeded. It'll have grass. So it'll just basically look like a depression. During rain events, it will hold water and release it at a certain specified rate. So again, we're not adding storm water into the system at a fast rate. So at a maximum storm event, so if we had a 100-year storm, there could be a maximum of 5 feet of water in there. But again, that's just during the storm event, and that's going to be released at a rate that will allow it to drain out and return to its normal condition, which will be dry. So it's not going to be a pool of water. For the most part, you see these all around the city. It's a dry basin, except in a rain event where it will hold water and reduce it or release it at a specific rate and allow it to become back to the dry state.
Great. And one last comment before we move on to the next section is that I know some of you dialed in late, and we are posting all of this information online. The presentation will be available and a recording of this presentation. So you'll be able to go back, and when I think we get to the live Q&A as well, we'll refresh everybody on what the green lines mean and the green and the orange and so on and so forth. So bear with us on that and we'll get to that. All right, Nick, if you want to go to the next slide, and Kevin, take it away again.
Okay, thank you, Marie. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. Like she said, we'll have some more time to discuss the additional questions here shortly, but I'm going to discuss the right-of-way part of the project now. Right-of-way for the project is going to require us to acquire a little bit more than 2.5 acres, almost 2.6 acres, to construct a new roadway. Out of that 2.59 acres or so, 98.9, a little more than 98.9% of that is coming from the Fire Water Limited property, which is the property that's in the middle of the lanes, and that, of course, is owned the same owner as the golf course. So about 1% or about 0.5% of that, which is roughly about 650 square feet, will have to come from 2 private residences. There's just a couple of small improvements that have to go, and we need to maintain those improvements, and they'll impact a couple private residences in the amount of about 650 square feet total. The last 0.5% is coming then from city property, which is, of course, the fire station that's on the southwest side of the project. We need a little bit of property there, again, just to kind of fit in some things and make sure that everything is adjusted appropriately with the project. Next slide, please. So that's the permanent acquisition that the city will have. The temporary acquisition will consist of a little bit more than 0.8 acres. Temporary acquisitions mean temporary easements. They're construction easements generally that the city will acquire to do grading work or temporary things that are required for the construction progress, but we don't need to keep that property. So we'll acquire it temporarily via a construction easement. Out of that 0.83 acres, almost 98% of that, again, is coming from the Fire Water Limited properties in the middle of the roadways there. A little bit more than 21% of that is from private residences. There's 7 of those, and they're, again, required just to complete grading work to make sure that everything ties back in properly to the existing earth. And then a little bit more than 10%, almost 11% of that is coming from city property. Again, that's the fire station down on the southeast or southwest side of the project. Next slide, please. With that right-of-way process, once we start that, representatives from the City of Columbus's Real Estate Division, they'll be in contact with any affected property owners once that starts. We plan that for later on this fall or early 2021, depending on how the remaining balance of this project plays out. So if you are one of those property owners, you will hear from the city, and we will contact you and give you the information that you need, let you know what is proposed, what's going on with your specific property. If you do have any questions, or if you're concerned that your property may be one of those, feel free to contact the project manager. That's me, and my information will be available at the end of the presentation. I'm happy to talk through what the right-of-way looks like at this point, what's proposed, and what we might be looking at once we get to that right-of-way phase. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll get into some of the construction. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin Carpenter. He's going to go over the construction process and some of the MOT, the maintenance of traffic that we can expect with the project.
Thank you, Kevin. So obviously, to build this project will be a little bit disruptive, obviously, during construction, as all construction projects are, but we've tried to minimize that as much as we can in our plan design. So this is what we're showing you tonight is what the plans call for and what will be bid for construction. So what you're seeing here is obviously the initial phase of the project will shift all traffic to the existing northbound lane. So we'll have a single lane northbound and a single lane southbound. And then Nick, if you go to the next slide. So then obviously the existing southbound lanes will be removed and reconstructed as much as possible offline, kind of while traffic is maintained on that existing northbound roadbed. That'll include all the way up to the roundabout. In this phase, Long Rifle will be maintained. Derringer Drive will be closed. Double Eagle will be closed. but access to Blue Jacket will still be maintained. And then if you go to the next slide, Nick, throughout all the phases of the projects, well, again, this is phase one. So again, we're seeing access is remaining open during this phase. But throughout the entire maintenance and construction, emergency access will be maintained throughout the neighborhood. So we'll have that. So there are other phases. We didn't want to show all the phases of construction. We can get into that if you have a specific question. We have some closures to make during the project, obviously. They are timed in the plan, so the contractor has a set amount of time that he can close any roadway. It has to be open after that said period of time. So we're trying to minimize the impact as much as possible, but as we're aware, as around the city, the construction is impactful, but we've tried to minimize it as much as we could.
So thank you, Kevin. I'm going to jump on the schedule real quick. As of right now, we're working to wrap up the design phase of the project and kick off that right-of-way acquisition phase of the project, like we just went over. So we're planning on finishing up our right-of-way here in the fall of 2020, sometime hopefully in the next month or so. And then that will kick off that phase where we'll start contacting property owners and start looking at how that acquisition will work. There's not too many that we need to make, so hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up in the spring of 2021. And then once we wrap up the right-of-way acquisition phase, we'll go into construction. And right now we're looking at construction starting in the spring of 2021. Now that construction, we're planning it to take 2 construction seasons. What that means is we'll run construction through the 2021 season of the spring, summer, and fall, and then we'll run into the 2022 construction season, spring, summer, and we'll wrap up that construction sometime in the fall of 2022. As with all schedules for projects like this, the schedule is tentative. It's based on, it requires weather to cooperate as well as a myriad of other factors. So as the schedule is updated and changes, we'll make sure that we keep updating the project website and make sure that that information gets out to the folks like you and the public that are definitely interested in knowing where the construction of the project is and how that's progressing forward. Next slide, please. Okay.
All right, so I'm back up. So a couple of questions. You were just talking about the detention basin a couple of minutes ago. When that does fill with rainwater, where does that drain to?
So that drains into so as a part of the project, we're making stormwater improvements throughout the entire project area. So specifically the drainage basin will drain, and I'm just pulling up the plans here so I can look at it. I believe it drains out to the east side of the basin, and then it'll continue into the storm sewer, and it ties into the existing storm sewer that's out there. But again, the detention basin is designed to collect the entire stormwater for the project, hold it for a set amount of time, and release it at a rate that's slower than actually what's out there today. So we're holding the rainwater. We're allowing the sediment to settle out of it and releasing it at a slower rate than if we didn't have any treatment out there at all, or what's out there today. Basically, there's no treatment out there today. So it's going to basically filter the water and allow it to be released at a slower rate. So it'll actually be a benefit to the community in the slower release of stormwater after the project is constructed.
Great. And then if we can back up to one of the maps, there's a question about where mailboxes will go and how you coordinate with the U.S. Postal Service. Can you explain that?
Yeah, certainly. So with any construction project, this one's no different. When we run into mailboxes, other types of parceled boxes, things like that, we always coordinate those with the agency or entity that owns and maintains that box. So the U.S. Postal Service will be notified of the project once we get to construction, once they know that needs to be relocated. And then it'll be up to the U.S. Postal Service to likely to determine a temporary location for the box, someplace they work out with the contractor that can be accessed by the public. And if not, they'll have to notify how you can access a post office box. But once the project is complete and everything's settled down with the construction, then it'll be up to the U.S. Postal Service again to relocate that box. If they decide to use a similar location, then that'll be up to them. I would assume they would assess the scenario with the community and locate the box accordingly. So So that's all coordinated through the final end of the project with construction with USPS.
And then I got a question for you, James. So we're getting some questions about the cost of the project. And how did this project come to being high on the priority list versus other streets they may see that seem like they need repaved? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, this showed up on our capital budget, and we were programming it for reconstruction. When you talk about resurfacing, we go out and we look at conditions and program that citywide. I saw that one in the comment about one of the, I'm going to say something ham, forgive me, that needs resurfacing. This goes through a different process and a different funding process for selection. So this came in, and it was programmed that way for reconstruction as a capital project as opposed to a maintenance project.
Okay, great. And then let's go back to one of those pictures where we can see the acreage that's being affected by the development. So Kevin Thomas, we're going to need your guidance here on which map to address. But yes, that slide that Nick just flew by, which is fine. I'm glad he did it. But this is a good overview slide here. It broke down how that acreage, was split up and so forth. Can you walk us through a little bit about that acreage that's being affected? Now, of course, a lot of people have questions about specifically what is happening on that acreage, where what the developers' plans are. And first, I want you to talk about where that acreage is, and then Jim Pike, if you want to talk about the development side of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. So probably the largest portion of the acreage that the city is acquiring for the project is the acreage on the south side of Long Rifle Road. That entire section of area between what is the existing roadway and the proposed roadway is being acquired for the detention basin, as well as the area needed to reconstruct the roadway, and then the area for the sidewalk, the area for the Sherry's Pass. So all of the improvements that we're doing south of Long Rifle are being done in that acreage that is going to be acquired for the project. From the central island and the northern smaller island, the acreage that we are acquiring is basically just on the east side of what is the existing roadway. We're going to be utilizing all of the existing right-of-way where the road is existing, as well as several more feet, or even, it's dozens of feet, I believe, of additional right-of-way along the east side of the roadway to construct the larger splitter island, the diverter island there that you see on the north of the roundabout, as well as the additional lane width and the shared use path on the east side of the roadway. And then we also, like I said, we also utilize the existing right-of-way to construct that the sidewalk that's in there today. So, so hopefully that answers the question. The vast majority of that acreage is on the south side of the project. We need a lot of space to accommodate the stormwater treatment for this project and make sure that we can accommodate all of that in the construction. And then Jim Pike, there are questions about, well, what does the developer have planned for some of these open spaces that the developer owns? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so as Kevin alluded to, so currently the property owner basically owns the entire median as you see it today, right? This would come from 161 going up the Long Rifle. That whole median is owned by somebody. It's not owned by the city of Columbus. North of Long Rifle, it widens out as you see it. Again, that is owned by a private owner. It's not owned by the city of Columbus. We just own the strips of right-of-way on both sides. And then as you get kind of north of that little axis, the Double Eagle Drive, where the oak tree is, that is all owned by a private owner. So what are plans? To be honest, that's a question for building and zoning. That does not fall under our realm. We will have some information at the end of this presentation on how to direct those questions as they are specific to what might be happening. I can tell you that this whole subdivision was developed back in the early 1970s, as we've talked about. At that time, it was approved as to an X amount of dwelling units that could be built in Little Turtle community here. That number, I believe, was, and building and zoning can verify, but I believe it was a little bit under 2,700 total units. And a unit could be a house, a unit could be an apartment. One unit is not an apartment building with 10 apartments in it. That would be considered 10 units. Kind of based on that of what you see right now, I believe, and again, I'll defer to building and zoning for more specifics, there's only about 88 units that could still be built within the Little Turtle community. That would get them to their maximum amount. So what you see out there now, I believe, is about 2,600. Again, I want you to direct all questions, because I'm sure you probably have, could commercial go out there? Again, that's entirely a question for building and zoning as they address that. But that's kind of what we've seen right now. Again, the land, as you see in the slide here, there's a good chunk that will still be owned by the gentleman that owns the golf course. That's basically that area between Long Rifle and Double Eagle Drive. Again, south of Long Rifle should all fall in the hands of the city. So that little green area you see south of Long Rifle, current right away, that will revert back. That'll all be city property.
And Jim, I know you're not trying to be coy. It's Firewater Limited. It's the golf course. We have it right on the slides.
Yes, correct.
Just want to acknowledge that. And then another question we had was about safety and noise. Concern that the roundabout is going to cause more noise. So, Kevin, do you want to address that?
Sure, absolutely. So this is a question that we've heard. We did not specifically study this intersection for noise impacts. It wasn't deemed something that was required for the project. One thing to keep in mind with roundabouts in general, though, we're taking a situation where previously you had to stop as a vehicle approaching Little Turtle Way, and then you had to look, make sure you could go, and then you had to accelerate. That process of stopping and accelerating is what creates a lot of traffic noise from passenger vehicles. By installing a roundabout, we're removing the need for a vast majority of vehicles to ever have to totally stop. You approach the roundabout, you can see what's coming, and you only have to yield. So if there is nothing in the roundabout, or if there's no reason to yield, then you slow your speed, approach the roundabout, and travel through. The fact that we reduce that stop and start scenario typically and very often reduces the amount of noise that we see at roundabout or at intersections converted to roundabouts. Another big factor to consider is because you don't have to stop and accelerate from a dead stop, you also are reducing the amount of emissions. You don't have cars that are typically sitting in a queue. You don't have cars that have to stop and start from a dead stop again. You don't have to cycle through a transmission. So another very big beneficial environmental factor from a roundabout is we typically see fewer emissions at roundabout intersections as well. So we didn't look at those items specifically for this project, but we are more than confident that what you'll see in the after effect is a reduction in those less desirable features of road transportation.
All right, so let's keep the maps up while I give some instructions to people who are online. We already have a couple people who have hit the raise your hand button, which you should be seeing, I believe, at the bottom of your screen. And if you would like to ask your question live, we will call on you and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question. Just our ground rules on that. We do have until 7 o'clock. So we have about, let's call it 25 minutes or so to respond to questions. And I want to make sure I get to as many people as possible. So just be succinct so that we can get a response to you. Darlene, you had your hand up actually for some time. So we would start with you if you have a question or a comment you would like to make.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know you started to talk about it, but I would be interested to know what are the steps in this construction? So you were saying, first of all, you would start on the southbound lanes to repave that. What would be after that? And what kind of timeline is in each step?
Nick, can you take us to the construction slides and And who wants to take that one?
That would probably be me. As we have in the plans, currently we have 5 phases for construction. Again, you're looking at, in this particular slide, you're looking at phase 1 of construction, where again, we're shifting traffic from the split roadway as it exists today to having a single lane northbound and a single lane southbound, utilizing the existing northbound roadway bed. During that phase of construction, which is the longest phase of construction, the contractor will remove and replace what you see in the orange here on the slide. So all the new roadway that's shown in orange here will be built in phase 1, which includes basically half of the roundabout outside the limits of Long Rifle. In this phase, again, Long Rifle is open and you can utilize it as you do today. And so really no changes to that. As we move into further phases of the project, which are not shown on these slides.
Kevin, stop there. So how long is phase 1? When does that begin?
I don't know that phase 1 has a time limit because I'd have to read through the notes in particular. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get you that answer.
So what you're saying is the phasing may not be sequential. Some of them may be concurrent. Is it possible?
Again, as we've laid them out in the plans and as it will be bid for construction, we have 5 separate phases. So I don't think any of it can be done concurrently because you can't, for example, build the center of the roundabout because again, you're going to have to close Long Rifle to do that. So what we need to have the roadway north of Long Rifle constructed so that we can utilize Derringer Drive when we close Long Rifle because that's the only access back to that neighborhood. So there are certain things that have to happen in specific order in order for the project to be completed and to allow maintenance residents to maintain access to their properties. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no. I mean, is there some way you can lay out these phases and potential timeline? Because I think we're all interested in what streets are going to be closed and how that's going to impact our lives.
Absolutely, we can. I don't have those details on these slides, but we can certainly provide that information. We have that existing in our plans.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
One qualification on that is you put together a bid package and it gives guidance, but the construction company contractor also has some flexibility. James, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, the contractor, and we're going to have multiple contractors bid on this, and we go with the lowest responsive bid. They might look at it and say, hey, we can do it a little differently based on the crews we have. Maybe we build a temporary drive over to the northbound lanes, and we want to build the roundabout first. They might approach it differently, and I'm just putting in a kind of a one idea, but they might go about it different, and they might want to do all the earthwork up front. They might come in and remove pavement or get a certain piece of it going. Maybe they build one portion, the new part to Little Turtle from Long Rifle down to 161. I think what the design teams put together is probably what would be bid, but you just don't know what's going to come up when they bid it, and you evaluate that. And for us at the city, we'd look at what's going to impact the residents the least. So they might propose something. We might say, follow this bid. You have to honor your prices for what you showed us. So that's how we introduce competition to bids and hopefully get the best value and still maintain maybe even some dates like you're mentioning, Darlene. So, maybe, and I'll take a stab at maybe seasonal as they go through. I mean, we have it for 2 construction seasons. So the first 2 might be going through removing the southbound lanes and actually starting part construction of the roundabout, with the second season finishing it off as you move to the next phase. So it's going to be hard to put in a time frame, only for the sheer fact weather is always a factor when we do construction. Just like rain today, we're not paving today because it was raining, but they can do earthwork, they can do concrete work, they can do some things in the rain. So I know I'm over a little bit, but we'll work with you. We have a great team in construction. You'll have a lot of opportunity to know what's going on when we get to that phase, and we'll be in contact.
And how will we contact you?
you'll have just like Kevin, we'll have a construction project manager that you'll actually have access to through 311, and you'll probably at some point get his cell phone number or her cell phone number, depending on who gets the project. We're very active. We want to make sure we're taking the best care of you during construction and make sure your access isn't, prohibited in any way.
All right,
We understand construction.
Okay, now we're going to move on to Patricia, and then followed by Patricia, we're going to go to Cynthia and then Michael. Patricia?
Yes. I was just, I was concerned about what looked to be a consolidation of the traffic lanes as opposed to an expansion, since we've got all this new construction coming in. I hear you guys saying that, this is really a project that the traffic study went out a number of years beyond. So I feel a little better about that. I'm just thinking that if we have traffic congestion coming up, in the next, 10, 15 years, is there any chance that can be addressed when it comes up? Or are we going to have to live with it for another 30 years or whatever? Did you all hear that?
Yeah, so if I can restate that, frame it for Kevin Thomas, that you're concerned that traffic is going to continue to grow, and so with this major improvement being done now, is the city going to be able to respond, sooner than 2050, for example, to make any other additional improvements? So Kevin, that's a big picture question.
I mean, due to congestion is what I'm thinking.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think the city's always poised to try to address those kinds of issues. James, I don't know if you want to jump in on what this specific project or what this specific area could expect from us that way.
Yeah. Let me speak a little to the capacity that's built in, because there were a lot of comments that kind of asked that. The roundabouts have more capacity than just regular stop sign intersections, so let's just start there. The improvements being made down at the signal were, I think Kevin mentioned it earlier, they were designed actually with ODOT's traffic. They do a 20-year projection. We're looking at all the potential growth in the area. Then you're using the 30th highest hour of the year. So you're actually designing for the 30th worst hour you can have. So we approach this from a pretty conservative standpoint. I think there's going to be enough capacity, depending on the congestion that you're even concerned about, where we can actually manage this system and even manage it for events. Going back, there's other projects where actually we have going on in the area. So we have a improvement over at, I don't know if there's a slide that shows the whole area, Nick, over at Dublin, Granville, and Ulrey, where we're putting in a left turn lane. I know traffic out here takes different routes to and from home. So we have another improvement over there that should actually help alleviate some of the people that might be coming this way. They might be able to go into Ulrey Road. So I think we do have flexibility. We do look at this as a network. It's not looked at as just a point. We do look at things in unison. So I think we feel pretty comfortable with what we're proposing here. And we had to get ODOT to sign off on the signal, for the improvements. So, and they're pretty rigorous on how they look at everything. So I'd say you should have pretty good comfort, especially with COVID right now. I know all the traffic's down, so it's kind of hard to imagine, and you're probably looking at like what could be, but I think there'll be more flexibility, because when you're driving through here today, you're going through a free flow condition and you're monitoring the other side. We're gonna manage that or meter it with a signal. So you'll have a lot more room to actually get in the right lane and use the roadway, and probably make it easier to get on 161.
Okay, I'm going to go to Cynthia next, but before when you hear Cynthia's question, Patricia and Darlene, if you would put your hands down, just so I don't lose track of the other people asking, if you'd address that button, and then we can come back to you later, but for now, if you would remove that. Okay, Cynthia's next, and then I go to Michael and then Matt.
This is Tom, Cynthia's husband.
Oh, okay.
And I guess my question is the developer pitching in for all this development for the new roadway because he's created this problem, and then you're removing the road for him. So essentially you're doing his work for him. And this is a neat plan. It works the way it is right now. It probably could have been, the curbs could have been taken out. The street could have been remilled and put back for probably a third of the price. And it seems like you're doing it all for fire water. Is that what you're doing? Or it just seems like a lot for nothing.
So Kevin, I think if you want to go back to the purpose and need of this project and walk us through that.
Yes, absolutely. So the biggest impetus for any of the projects that we do is what is the need of that facility? James mentioned it, mentioned it earlier as well. The roadway itself out here has been scheduled for reconstruction. So it's not a situation that resurfacing and milling will address the issue. We would be back out here in 3 to 5 years doing the same thing all over again. The roadway really needs to be reconstructed. It's not really were we looking for a way to do work out here? This roadway really needs this project. The changes that are incorporated in the project are done to help address traffic issues that exist already. New development isn't really necessary to see the backups that are out there. We've gotten 311 calls and we've seen the complaints about traffic that backs up off of the 161 ramp. So the needs for the project already existed and existed by themselves. So our ability to design and construct a project that is cost efficient, that is roadway efficient, helps traffic move in a more efficient manner than it does today, as well as adding in those multimodal facilities, the sidewalks, the bike lanes, addressing the stormwater issues. All of those things we really couldn't do if all we did was resurface the roadway, and then all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on a problem that really needs much more attention. So there's not really a driving factor outside of any of those project needs. We understand the visible, what it looks like goes on out there, but the project itself, I think, speaks for itself. And this project need is a very important part of why we would start or initiate any project of this size.
All right, and next we're going to go to Michael. While we're going to Michael, Jim, did you want to make a note about some of the coordination that goes on among the partners at the city?
Yes, and I want to make sure everybody's well aware that when the Department of Public Service proceeds with a project like this, any roadway project throughout the city, that it's not just public service that is reviewing the set of plans that Kevin Carpenter's company put together and Kevin Thomas is managing. We're a small fraction of the people that actually review these projects. We might have 5 different people within public service that are reviewing the plans. We also have groups in public utilities. There's a group from water, there's a group from sewers and drains, there's a group from power. They're all looking and reviewing the plans as well. And then this extends also to the Department of Technology. This also extends to Recreation and Parks. And it also extends to the fire department. So the Division of Fire has a reviewer that looks at our plans as well as the folks at Recreation and Parks do. And they have a chance to see what's being done. And if there's issues, they have a chance to comment and we can try to address it that way. And then ultimately, when the project is final, all these different departments sign off on the plans. If you look at a city's title sheet, each one of these different divisions or departments has a signature line on our title sheet that says that they've seen the project, they've had a chance to look at it, and they're good with us proceeding to bid it out. So I just want to make sure that, because I know there's a lot of questions as, are we coordinating with this group? Have you spoken to this group? we have, and they all have a chance to weigh in on any concerns they may have. So I just wanted to kind of make that statement right now to let everybody know that it's the entire city that reviews this project.
Thank you, Jim. And I want to make sure Michael's next, but we've got Matt, then Jerry, then Kevin, then Rob, then Jennifer right behind them. So let's pick up the pace a little bit so we can get to all those folks before we wrap up at 7. Michael.
Hey, good afternoon. So surely I'll make this quick. So I'm wondering, is this the same group who designed North Hamilton? And I mean, I'm new to the Columbus area, and I'm pretty much taken back at the inefficiencies of the roadways in their design right now currently. On average, it takes about 10 minutes to travel 1 mile around Columbus in any area. And I'm looking at the current projects that are going on in North Hamilton, and I'm trying to use those. I mean, is this the same people that are doing those projects and the roundabout there at North Hamilton, especially like just past the gym area over there, which hasn't been anything but less than effective. So I'm just wondering if that would have any determination on how this project would end, as well as some of the costly things that are adding into this project, like a turn signal, which I feel is unnecessary when basically that area just needs a little bit widening on that area and put a yield for that right-hand turn. I don't understand. I'm also in agreement with the original person when you have 4 lanes going out and you got 2 lanes coming in. Why would you not just make it 6 lanes there and just keep that existing roadway?
Okay, so we're gonna get to some responses. So Kevin, do you want to talk about, kind of the fundamentals of design and how those things work?
Sure, absolutely. So I don't want to go too deep into where design goes with it, but
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's as a municipality, as an agency that looks at roadways, the last thing that we want to do is say, well, we've got a problem, add more lanes. That's kind of a doctrine.
Well, I guess that's not really what I'm saying here, really. Not to cut you off, but I guess I'm really to get at the root cause of the issue is I'm seeing a lot of ineffective road construction, especially like North Hamilton as an example. In that whole area over there by where I don't know what they're building over there, but that traffic circle seems to be a big point of congestion every time I'm in that area. And I think that was put in to ease some traffic in that area, and it's not been effective.
I need you to wrap up. Okay, so Kevin, can you respond to that?
Sure, certainly. I am not familiar with the project over there on North Hamilton. I don't know if any of other panelists may want to discuss that one more specifically. I do want to iterate, though, that the project that we have for Little Turtle has been designed and does specifically intend to address the issues that are inherent with Little Turtle. It's not a project for North Hamilton. It's not a project for any other area of the city. It's designed to work with the traffic and the experience that we see in Little Turtle today. That project need list kind of covers. There's more than one reason why the project is the way it is and what it's proposing to do. So,
Kevin, let's let James weigh in on that.
Sure, certainly.
So let me talk about the 3 roundabouts on Hamilton Road, and you're specifically mentioning the southern one. So right now, Hamilton going from that southern roundabout down to Morse Road has been a congestion issue for 20 plus years. We're actually widening that to 5 lanes. 5 lanes. So there are a lot of backups that happen right on the north end when everybody hits that. So it's probably, it is probably making that roundabout work less than efficient. But we're also projecting that area, that former field is actually going to be developed. And roundabouts work best when the legs have some balance and some traffic on them. And right now, the whole idea of putting those roundabouts in was to actually eliminate a bunch of driveways and control access points to maintain good speed, to provide safe movements. Old Hamilton going into Hamilton right now could probably work better, and I think it will work better once we get the other project in and you see the area develop out more. But I agree with you. I've been through there, and I know going southbound, especially in the PM over here, it can back up, and it does take a while to go through that corridor.
Right. And so what I'm talking about is that
Hey,
same situation is you're going to
I'm
create
sorry.
one leg.
We're going to
You're
have to.
creating one leg that's
Hey,
out of
you got
that
to be
neighborhood
respectful of
on
the
that.
other people on the phone. So we're going to go to the next one. So I believe Matt is our next person up. So after Matt, we've got Jerry, Kevin, Rob, Jennifer, and Vicky. I know that we'll get to them all. So let's be brief, Matt.
Thank you very much. Could you pull up the streetscape improvements overview, that diagram? Because that's what I'd like to talk about. And I think this might be for James. James, this goes to Patricia's question, and I think you only really addressed the roundabout in terms of capacity in the future. I want to go to the right and look at between Derringer Drive and Blue Jacket Road, and you're not showing further up where, what is it, Firewater Lane is, okay? I drove that here today to get a good idea of things. We're looking at right now 2 lanes on both sides. Okay, right now for that area. And what I'm seeing here is you're going to reduce that capacity down from Derringer Drive to Blue Jacket to just 1 lane in one direction. And that also, are you going to keep that 1 lane in each direction up to Firewater Lane? Because right there where the golf course entrance is and Firewater Lane, you've got all those condos that are being built there. That's just going to dump excess capacity there. So my first question is that. And the second question is going to Patricia's comment, along with the last gentleman, Michael, in terms of, design-wise. What happens if this design does not do what's intended to do? And what happens if the capacity's not there? Okay. What happens that you've only got 2 lanes there, 1 in each direction? Do you have the ability to expand that in the future for those reasons I mentioned? Or if not, why aren't you just going full 2 lanes in both directions now and be done with that and not have to worry about it? I'm just not understanding.
Matt, you asked a good question. You asked a good question. Let's let our team respond so we can get to others too. So Kevin or Jim?
Well, I mean, yeah. So James, do you want to touch on that bigger picture of that, or do you want me to discuss that a little bit?
Well, to talk about the 2 lanes right there. I mean, I think what he's pointing out, again, there's 4 lanes today, but they really kind of function as 2. But go on.
Sure, certainly. Okay, so it kind of goes all the way back to Kevin Carpenter's discussion about the traffic projections and the traffic counts that we do. Those traffic projections, they do take into account all of the possible development that could happen in Little Turtle. I believe Jim noted earlier that the original zoning sets a limit for the total amount of development that can happen in the Little Turtle community. So by knowing that upper limit and knowing what we do about the surrounding areas of the city, all of that information goes into that traffic study and the traffic counts that we developed along with ODOT. And I don't know that we've noted it yet, but it's also worth noting that the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, MORPC, their models also go into helping ODOT determine what that traffic is going to look like. So I understand the uncertainty sometimes about why and how that's going to look in the future, but it already takes into account all of those new condominiums that are being built, the ones that are proposed and being built up there at the moment. It also takes into account any additional development that could potentially come based on what the zoning is for the community. So we looked at all of that. We looked at that traffic information, and based on that, we can determine that, and as James pointed out, we're talking about the 30th highest hour in the year for volume of traffic. And that analysis determines that that 1 lane will handle that capacity of traffic. And we no longer need those 2 lanes that were out there existing today. When roadways are designed, they're based on the best information at that time, and we have much more information today than what we did when this road was originally built. So we're working with that, and we're making sure that this roadway can handle that capacity. I think it's also worth noting, and I'm not sure, I know that development is not completely built out yet, But I do believe that the development plan for those condos has a secondary access to exit onto Long Rifle. So I don't believe that we'll see a situation where every single person in that development has to exit through Little Turtle Way. I'm not versed in the development plan, but I have seen what they're proposing up there, and I do believe that that's the proposition is to have an additional access point where folks can exit directly onto Long Rifle. So that again is a factor that really makes it better than what it may seem like on paper.
So Kevin, I'm going to move to the next person. James, did you want to say something real quick?
No, Kevin covered it.
Okay, great. So Jerry Bowman is next. Please be brief, Jerry.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief. Two things. One, about the mounds, since they belong to Firewater. If there's any type of development on those mounds, commercial or residential, that is certainly going to have a negative impact into the roadway, into the network that you've got set up. Would you agree?
Again, the potential build out for this community is already factored into the roadway design. So whatever scenario could potentially come from development has been considered and is incorporated into the design of the capacity that we're allotting for the project.
Well, Kevin, my concern is if you start building on the mounds, how are people going to access the network? You're going to have a choke point there. It's incredible. Since you're already going down to 2 lanes from 4 lanes, I've been out here 30 years. The amount of people out here, there's over 1,000, almost 1,000 single family dwellings out here, not counting the apartments. Everybody in our neighborhood has at least 2 cars. Some have more. So we're talking several thousands of cars in this, right in this little community. And this 2 lanes is definitely, what I see is going to be a choke point. It's going to be a horror story. And if there's any construction goes on the mounds, that's just going to complicate it even more. So.
Well, we appreciate your feedback on that. Okay, we're going to move to Rob. We're winding out of time, Rob, Jennifer, and Vicki, we're going to let you have your questions in before we close the meeting, so we may go just a little bit over 7. So, Kevin, you're next. Kevin D. Okay, Kevin, I'm not hearing from you. Judd, are you hearing anything on your end?
Hello?
Kevin?
Yeah. Hey, not to beat a dead horse, but can you guys just quickly answer the question, did the golf course have anything to do with this? Question number 2 is, you guys have answered, you're building sidewalks from, I think, Long Rifle to the fire station. Is there any reason why nobody's contemplated doing that around the loop? Because that's where most people walk. And then third, this has been mentioned about 10 times, but right now, the way we have it, we have a direct lane that goes out of the community. Now we're going to get stuck at that roundabout. There are cars already that are basically stuck at Long Rifle waiting to get out of here. So now we're going to be stuck, and people are going to be stuck in the roundabout. And Kevin, I appreciate what you're saying about you're building this out for, it takes into account the building in our community. We have all of Ulrey and beyond that being built up. All of those people are cutting across, coming down Long Rifle. They're not going out to 161. They're coming through our community. Have you taken that into account? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the questions. They're all very good questions. I'm going to leave the first one for James. I will address the roundabout intersection question. One big advantage that you're going to see with the roundabout versus your existing intersections is the right of way for the roundabout is much more balanced than what you have today. When you pull up to that on Long Rifle Road, you have to wait until there's a gap in the traffic that's coming northbound and then again southbound. When you approach that roundabout, it puts everybody kind of on the same playing field. You only have to yield to whoever is actually in the roundabout at the time you pull up to the roundabout. So your opportunity for a gap to enter that roadway is exactly the same as everybody else's. And that will balance out that traffic feeling as you move through that intersection versus what you see out there today with a stop-controlled intersection. With addressing the traffic coming from Ulrey Road, we did count that, and that is part of the traffic projections that were done with the traffic counts for the project. With that being said, drastic amounts of development are going on all over the northeast side of the city. There are other projects, as James also mentioned, that try to help address issues in those locations so that folks can find the most appropriate and efficient ways to get in and out of those locations. So the traffic patterns today of folks coming over Albury Road may not look the same once several projects can be in place and these developments are built out. So it's not a super direct answer, but it is something that is considered with the project that way. And then that other point on the origins of the project, again, I would direct that to James to answer for this particular project.
James, before you respond, let me just note it's 7 p.m. So those of you who are leaving right now, we are going to be responding to frequently asked questions and posting those online as well. So we will do that. And then secondly, after James responds, next is going to be Rob, followed by Jennifer and Vicky. Okay, James.
So the first part of the question, again, when we're doing resurfacing, that's programmed and that's done internally to a whole resurfacing program. When we're doing reconstruction, that comes through the capital program. We have been in talks with the property owner for the sheer fact the median islands are his property. So as we've been going through this project, we have been in conversations with him. Help me with the second part of the question, Kevin, the origin. What was that reference to?
The question was if he had anything to do with the startup of the project.
It was part of our capital program when we got our capital budget. We had this as part of a reconstruction effort in the area of the city. We've had it for other roadways too, so not unusual at all.
And then Judd, I think we're going to answer part of that question regarding the walk to the north.
Yeah, there was a question about extending the sidewalk or shared use path to the north. I think someone mentioned it, and then it's also been a written question that we've received a couple times. So that was a comment that we had also received at the previous public meeting, and we have passed that information and that request along to our infrastructure management folks who program all the sidewalks in the city. We've also talked to Recs and Parks Department about that. Obviously, they're involved in the I don't recall the name, but the park to the north. So we passed that along that folks are interested in that as well. So I think that is on everyone's radar. I have driven that area. I agree sidewalks are needed through that area. I would encourage folks, if you have a concern about sidewalks or anything else, that we have our 311 system, and you can put a request for sidewalks or other improvements and through that 311 system. Please don't do it related to this project. Please contact Kevin or myself or one of us. But other items could go through that 311 system, and that could assist in potentially making that a priority.
Okay, I think we have Rob up next.
Yeah, thanks. This is a slight repeat of the previous question because I was going to ask about sidewalks to the north too. So I'll just piggyback on that a little bit and say, is there any timeline for when there may be a decision on that moving forward? And it may not, the last thing is, it may not be a popular opinion amongst most people listening, but I think the project will be good for the area. It will work once we get through the construction. And I want to just give a vote of confidence to the team that's presenting today, and I'll be quiet and listen to the answer to the sidewalks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We have, like Judd said, we have discussed that with our infrastructure manager group. There was actually some interest in looking into that. I don't have any updates specifically on a timeline for that, but as Judd also said, continued interest from the community definitely helps raise that profile. And then it's something that, as those projects can become available, there are definitely things that we move down a list to try to find those opportunities like that. And this one is definitely one that we've added to that list. So that's what I know at the moment. James, I don't know if you know anything else, but that's what I know.
No, I don't know anything else related to the sidewalks.
Okay, so I hear add your comment to 311, right? But it is being considered. Okay, so I had Jennifer next and then Vicky. Is Jennifer still on the line? She may have left.
Hello?
Is that Jennifer?
It's Jennifer, yes.
Fabulous. Great.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. So my question is, when we're talking about the roadway, and I know you guys are probably tired of these questions, but the roundabout I think is a great idea. I'm not upset about that. My concern is in the mornings especially, we get backed up because of that stop sign. And a lot of that backup comes from people who are continuously turning right basically from old 161 and then turning left. So we kind of get stopped. Now, I think the light will help some of that, but I'm also concerned that that light is going to cause the backup to go into the roundabout, you know, which is going to create extra congestion. Do you guys have a plan for that?
Looks like Kevin Carpenter's ready to jump on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is actually something that we worked with the city, with ODOT on. So again, the timing of those signals is coordinated to prevent those things from happening. So I mentioned about backing traffic up onto the bridge to the south, but it's also not going to allow traffic to back up into the roundabout because we don't want to do that. So the traffic is going to be timed to allow to incorporate how many cars can fit on the roadway in those separate areas to make sure that that doesn't happen. So we've taken that into account. And again, we're using that design year that we've talked about, that 30th hour, to make sure that the capacity of these signals will allow for the free flow of traffic so that you don't have those significant delays that you see now in the AM peak. Because, you know, we look at things called level of service. And so right now you have a level of service F. So that intersection is failing today in existing conditions in the AM period. And so with the signal, we forecast that you'll have a level of service that will be significantly better than you do today. And so, yes, we absolutely planned that. We've taken that into consideration. We've looked at that, and we don't believe that that's going to be an issue.
All right, and then Vicki has been so incredibly patient. She's our last question tonight. So, Vicki. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I've got a few questions, and I know I've put a few up. I think I kind of speak for maybe 30 people in our neighborhood. We've kind of been really upset about this, and some of the questions we have are, first of all, who started this whole project? We feel it's been Firewater, which is who we know him as Mo, and we don't feel like we were ever asked about it. So that's our first question. The second question I have is Mo able to build on these, you know, the middle parts where you said you're going to, you know, you said this, you keep saying private owners own this, and we know that's Firewater, which means it's Mo. So it's like he's talked about putting, you know, a gas station or a other kind of stores, which we're not happy about that. My third question is, has anyone spoken to Westerville City Schools? Because this is really going to impact how the buses can get in here and get the kids out. So those are my questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Vicki. So we're going to wrap with responses to these questions. There are questions. The new question heard was about bus service, and I know, you know, there's been coordination on where kids are going to school there in Little Turtle Way. So, Kevin Thomas, do you want to respond to that question?
Sure. So, in my recollection of the project, I'm trying to think if we've had direct contact with that specific school. You know, we try to have as many people as we can review the plans. So I don't believe I have a specific recollection of that particular school being addressed with the busing or routes. The city does have a bus school or a school zone coordinator. We have her information available. We can make it available as well. That's the individual that works with the schools to work on bus routes, work on bus stops, all that kind of information. So that would be something that kind of goes on, you know, more on that side than what we do with the design of the project. Now, with relation to the design of the project, we definitely make sure that our intersections are traversable by buses. We have specific templates that make sure that a bus can travel all the curves, make it around the intersection, get in and out in the same or similar ways that they could, if it was a T intersection or a signalized intersection or something like that. The only other comment that I can make to that specifically is, we intend to improve traffic flow and traffic operations with the project. So the buses will, they'll reap the benefits of that as well. So they should be able to get in and access the community to pick up the children, take them out of the community, go to school, and then similarly coming back during the drop-offs to make sure that that happens as efficiently as they can.
And then James, you've answered this question a number of times. We'll do it one more time. What initiated this project, and what do you know about the property owner's plans for development? So James, can you explain, when you say it shows up on a capital program, can you explain how it shows up?
So a lot of times we'll have roads that need reconstruction, and we'll have them in, for lack of a better term, like queues, back burners. We keep them on lists and we talk about them. And like, for instance, we had the reconstruction of Medina Avenue over in the Linden area this last year, and it's being reconstructed now. It came in on our capital program, and we do get these based on need, based on other I'll say input from community groups. So just like 311, we do record these things, and these do pop up in the sense of it through the years. Going through, and I guess this has been a continual driving question. We go back, our job is to look at the road and the condition of it, and once it shows up and we have it on a capital program, we go and we start the project to start figuring out what we need to do and what the issues are. So that's how this initiated. Is we had this, we showed the purpose and need earlier on the project. I feel we keep answering this question, and I feel like you guys aren't getting the answer you want. So.
And to that end, I think, the development related questions, those really need to be directed to building and zoning and to the property owner, because, the people who own the property get to make those, decisions following that process through building and zoning. So that would be the appropriate place. I want to thank everybody. We so appreciate your participation tonight. We have gone over a little bit, and I want to assure you that what shows up in the Q&A will be added to the frequently asked questions that we're going to be posting online, along with this presentation and the recording. So we're going to wrap up. And again, thank you so much. We appreciate your input, and have a great evening. And we are adjourned. I wasn't clear on that. Jim, did you want to make one parting comment? Nope, he's all good. Okay.